Hey friends, I'm Laurent. I got a quick question. Why do we do the things we do? That's a good question, huh? Well, we'll talk about this and more coming next, so stick around. Hey friends, I'm Laurent. Welcome to our show. Today, we have a fantastic show. Why? Because a good friend of mine is in the studios with us. His name is Dr. Allen Dyer. He's a professor of psychiatry and behavioral science at George Washington University. And he's also the author of his memoir called One More Mountain to Climb. Please welcome Dr. Allen Dyer to our studios. Welcome.
Thank you, Laurent. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, I always say, please welcome, because I pretend that we have a live audience. But one day we will. One day we will, and they'll be clapping and everything. But welcome to our show. It's an honor for me to have you here.
Well, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
A little piece of information also is I met Allen in one of my fitness classes, and it's incredible the way he moves. I got to tell you that he's a fitness buff, but more importantly, he's an incredible person, and I'm honored to be sitting close to you. Before we get in the subject of the brain, before we tap in the brain, because I'm really fascinated by the brain and how it functions, and to understand what makes people do the things they do. We're going to talk about that. What I want to do is I want to talk about your memoir.
Okay.
One More Mountain to Climb. I suspect we're not talking about actual climbing mountains here, right?
Well, we are talking about climbing
okay.
actual mountains. The memoir is a memoir about my experience going through a bone marrow transplant for cancer.
Oh, wow.
I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma in 1998, now 18 years ago. So that's a long-term survival. And the way that I coped with dealing with cancer, it was a big challenge. Dealing with cancer treatment was an even bigger challenge. And for me, the way of dealing with it was dealing with other challenges I dealt with in my life, like climbing mountains. My wife and I had climbed the Matterhorn on our honeymoon.
Oh, wow. So you actually climbed mountains?
Climbed mountains, yes.
Okay.
And trekking in Nepal on several occasions. So I talk about those experiences, my memories of climbing mountains, as a kind of metaphor for the challenges of dealing with cancer. And so that's where the title comes from, and that's partly what the book is about. It's about mountain climbing. Shortly before my cancer treatment in 1998, there had been a big disaster on Mount Everest, and a number of books were coming out about that disaster, and I read all of those books avidly. And so it was, how do people cope with disasters? Because in my experience, being diagnosed with cancer was a big disaster. It's actually become part of my work now, dealing with disaster response, disasters like tsunamis, earthquakes, even war and war zones, and how individuals deal with disasters, and how communities deal with disasters, and how humanitarian workers can help people facing disasters. All of that, or much of that, learned from my experience dealing with a disaster in my own life, the tsunami of cancer.
Amazing story, and people could read about this. The book is available, I guess, on Amazon?
It's available on Amazon.
Go get it. It sounds like an incredible story, and thank you so much for sharing your story about it. As you know, I'm a fitness guy, and I'm fascinated with the human brain, and what I want to talk, and that's what I want to talk. I want to focus our talk on this today, and I want to help our viewers understand what makes them eat that extra piece of pizza. What makes them eat that extra piece of cake and drink that extra drink when they know it's bad for them, And my first question is, are we wired to be lazy?
No. Basically, the answer is no. We're not wired to be lazy. Everyone is unique in terms of what motivates them, and so we have to break that down in terms of the individual situation. So what makes me eat that extra Oreo and you that extra piece of pizza might be something very different, depending on our history, our developmental history, the challenges that we faced, the goals that we have, and the motivations that we have. So the first best answer to your question is to know thyself. And that was something the ancient Greeks figured out a long time ago. The admonition, know thyself. And so when it comes to fitness, when it comes to motivation for fitness or for academic work or for professional achievement, it's a very individual thing. And we start with an awareness of who we are and what makes us tick, and that's a very personal thing.
So that's not in our genetics to be lazy, to try to find the easiest path possible, right? And my next question is, what creates motivation? Okay, what makes someone start a fitness program? What makes someone look for a new job? What creates motivation?
Again, it would be different for everyone. I think an easy way to break that down is to think of both sides of the equation. What makes somebody want to move forward, and what keeps them from moving forward? What keeps them turning around and doing something that may be self-defeating?
So let's talk about that.
So part of it would be conscious, and say we have the goals to go to the gym, to become more fit, to lose weight, but also there's something that inhibits us in those goals. So there's the conscious part and there's the unconscious part. And so again, in terms of coming to know oneself, we look at the patterns that we've employed over time and see what's worked and what hasn't worked.
Right.
And again, that's a very individual thing, but a case of looking at ourselves, being honest with ourselves, and understanding ourselves in the context of how we've done things in the past.
And would you say that we're wired genetically to motivate ourselves, or do we need to look for motivation outside?
Well, one thing I would say about that is that probably to do it by oneself is not always the best way to do it, that it helps that it's social in some way. So in terms of having a trainer that helps with the motivation, or to having a group that one works with, or to having a workout buddy or a friend. And so that it isn't something that one does in isolation, but it's something that one does in a community of support, a community of shared goals, a community of shared vision.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, the studies that show that people that work out together actually have lesser chances to not continue their workout versus them doing it on their own. So there's a lot to say about working out with a group, working out with your partner, whether your wife or husband or whatever it is. You stick more with the program. You know, and I find that myself as a fitness professional, when I have a group, they kind of, everybody knows they have to be there at a certain time, and if they don't, then they'll have to deal with their friends or whatever it is, you know, or a husband, if they don't show up. So there's that pressure.
And if you make a promise to someone else, I'll meet you at the gym, we'll go swimming at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's a little bit different than saying, I'll just get up if I feel like it, but oh, it's raining out today, maybe I won't do it.
Right.
But if Charles has promised to be there and you promised Charles that you'll be there,
hey,
then
Charles, I gotta be there, right?
You better be there.
Let's talk about the war of the sexes. Does gender influence motivation? Are women more genetically gifted in terms of motivation, or vice versa?
That's a big one, Lauren. I'm not sure I want to tackle that.
You know, this is a fun show over here. So genetically, who is more motivated, or it's just equal?
I would say that it's more individual than in terms of gender. I mean, women and men face similar kinds of issues in terms of motivation. What does it mean for them?
Right.
How do they deal with relationships? How do they deal with competition? There would be different factors for men and women. Many of them would be genetic, but many of them would be cultural. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do in the 21st century is break down some of those cultural barriers to make it easier for everyone to achieve their own goals without having to face down stereotypes or something like that.
Okay. What do you think of motivation through reinforcement? You know, I was reading something the other day, an article about behaviorists talking about rewarding ourselves.
Yes.
You know, at little steps. You know, we have a big goal, and at each step of us reaching that goal, you reward yourself with something. Is there something to say about that?
Sure, and that's certainly the way that animals are trained. You know, they're given you want to teach a dog a trick and you give them a little biscuit or something like that.
Right.
The rewards for people may be more subtle than that. But I think you were onto something important in terms of what are the psychological rewards, what has meaning and value for each of us. And you also identified something important in terms of the getting goals that are achievable and taking small steps towards bigger goals. There's a saying, inch by inch, life's a cinch, yard by yard, it can be hard.
I like that. Did you guys hear that before? I never heard that before. That's fantastic. I like that. I read this article recently, another article. As you can see, I read a lot of articles because I'm fascinated by this. And they were talking about motives of why people exercised. And the one that came on top, people mentioned that health is the motive why they exercise. But what surprised me is that came down on the list of what motivates people to exercise is enjoyment. And so I'm thinking, I say, are people exercising because they have to only, not because they want to?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think in the back of our minds we know that health and fitness go together, and that we have certain measures of health, weight, blood pressure, blood sugar level, any genetic propensities we may have, or any illnesses that we have, so that we know that exercise may be an important component of dealing with many of those kinds of things. But then in terms of the idea in the back of our minds that something may be important, if it isn't fun, maybe we're not going to do it. And so I think in terms of an exercise program, I overheard someone say today that the idea of motivating people by yelling at them just isn't as popular now as it used to be.
Oh, those
and
like
I think
boot camps kind of thing?
The boot camp kinds of things. And I have nothing against the boot camp kind of thing if somebody signs on for it and says, this is what I want to do, this is what I need to do. But in order to sustain a behavioral pattern over time, there has to be some reward in it, some enjoyment.
I see. Why is breaking a bad habit so hard? We know, we take the case of smokers, for example. They know it's bad for them. Why is it so hard to break that pattern?
So smoking is a good example, because it's one of the biggest health risks that there is. And it's hard for a lot of reasons. One, because cigarettes, nicotine, tobacco is chemically addicting. And so it's not just the behavioral habit, but it's the chemical addiction as well. So there you have several layers of motivation. One is knowing the dangers to your health of smoking, and then one is acknowledging the personal satisfactions that come with the ritual of smoking, lighting up a cigarette, maybe even a social situation of lighting up a cigarette with others. And so all of those things have to be overcome. A lot has been learned about how to stop smoking, smoking cessation programs. And one of the things that we've realized is that a decision to stop smoking or to break a bad habit, to get to your larger question, isn't something that one just does in an instant. It's something that one considers and contemplates over time, so that there are a number of stages that one goes through. A pre-contemplative stage, a contemplative stage, a making a decision stage, decision at some future point in time, and then actually setting the point in time and then going through the steps that have to be gone through to make that change. So, for example, if a doctor asks a patient, do you smoke? And that's a question we should ask everyone, and they say they do. It's not enough just to say, well, you should stop smoking because it's not good for you. We have to work with them over time to reinforce the behavior of changing the behavior and breaking the bad habit.
Okay, which brings me to my next question. I was reading this article, again, from the Harvard School of Medicine. And they were talking about, and this is something I believe in because this is what I share with some of the clients that come to me and ask me those same questions. They said that goals are easiest achieved when they are specific.
Yes.
And when someone comes to me and tells me, oh, I should lose weight, to me, that's not specific. I should lose weight. I try to kind of, gear them towards why do you want to lose weight, first of all? Attach some kind of emotional attachment to why you want to do this. I tell them, like, you want to lose weight. Why? Because you want to be here in 10, 15 years to see your grandchildren grow. Something like, something that's emotional with them. What do you think of that study?
So I think that's very useful and very important. There's a concept called SMART goals, which is an acronym, and it's used in business, it's used in all kinds of things where one might be goal setting, and I think the example of losing weight is a good example. So the S is for specific, the M is for measurable, the A is for achievable, the R is for realistic, and the T is for time sensitive. So in terms of losing weight, okay, that's a goal. Is it a SMART goal? Well, yes, in one sense it's smart. It may be smart if you're overweight. I mean, if you're not overweight, that maybe it's unnecessary, but say one is overweight. And let's just say arbitrarily that according to the indices, the body mass index or whatever it is, that for your height, you should be 30 pounds less than what you are. Is that a SMART goal? Was it specific? It's measurable. I mean, it's easy enough to measure the weight. You step on a scale on day 1 and you record it, and then day 30 and you record it, and day 60 and you record it. Is it achievable? Well, maybe it is and maybe it isn't, but is it realistic? And so if you say 30 pounds, then the T comes in terms of the time.
Okay, but hold on one second. Hold this thought, because my director is telling me now to take a break. We'll be right back with Dr. Allen Dyer with some incredible stuff on psychiatry. Hi, I'm Laurent. Do you know which foods will increase your brain power? Oily fish like sardines, salmon, trouts are rich in omega-3 and great for healthy brain power. Tomatoes helps against dementia and Alzheimer's. Black currants increases mental agility. Pumpkin seeds, rich in zinc, which enhances memory and thinking skills. Enjoy those foods on a regular basis et bon appétit. We're back to our show with Dr. Allen Dyer, and before we went to our break, we were talking about this study from Harvard Medical School saying that goals are easiest achieved when they are specific. And you were giving me a list. Please continue.
Yes, I was talking about the acronym of SMART goals.
SMART goals.
Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time sensitive. And we were dealing with the hypothetical situation of somebody who wanted to lose 30 pounds. All of that could be a SMART goal, depending on the time frame.
Right.
And it would be a question of over how long a period of time should one expect to lose 30 pounds. Over a year, that might be realistic and time sensitive. Mm-hmm. Over 6 months, that might be a very ambitious goal. So I like to think of goals in terms of proximal and distal. This is a term from anatomy. The proximal part is the closest part, and the distal part is the furthest away. And so the 30 pounds would be the distal goal, but the more proximal goal might be to lose 5 pounds.
Right.
And say 5 pounds is likely achievable. In the process of losing 5 pounds, one establishes a certain number of rituals.
Right.
One figures out what one's diet has to be. How much time does one have to spend in the gym? How much time doing cardiovascular exercise?
Right.
Does one have to deny oneself all pleasurable things that one enjoys eating? Does one have to give up all sweets? Or are there certain things that one can do? Does it have to be a painful diet, or can it be a diet that is more comfortable and that you can live with over a longer period of time? Mm-hmm. So to have the more proximal goal, establish the rituals that go along with the process of weight loss, and then work steadily towards the more distal goal, and that it be a realistic and achievable goal.
And I completely agree with you. I mean, especially in the fitness field, when someone comes to me and says, I got 30 pounds to lose, and I got to do it in 3 months or whatever, I always say, hey, listen, let's create those rituals that you need to lose the first 5.
Yep.
Because basically the rituals that will help you get those 5 pounds off are going to be the same that will help you get those 25 other pounds. So once you establish kind of that a pattern, those rituals, it'll be much easier to get the other weight off. And also psychologically, it'll be easier to say, okay, 5 pounds is so much easier to visualize than actually thinking I got 30 pounds to lose, Which brings me to my next question over here, which is, why are we so attracted by the magic pill? We see all those commercials all the time about get those 6-pack abs in 2 days or get chiseled in 24 hours. And that brings me back to the first question that I asked, are we wired to be lazy?
So again, I'll give you the answer. No, we're not wired to be lazy, but there are a lot of resistances to achieving the path forward. And that's where knowing ourselves comes into, in terms of, we all might be tempted to abandon our goals temporarily or not work on them all the time. But that may be part of the reward system as well. Mm-hmm. There may be occasions when we just have to have a Dunkin' Donut. And or a piece of cake. They're good, but not all the time. Not as part of a regular diet. So to have a realistic goal, but then not to punish oneself in order to achieve it, but to figure out what is the pleasure in that, the pleasure of meeting certain goals, meeting certain milestones along the way.
Okay. All right. So these were my questions. Now, this is my favorite part of the show where we have our viewers ask you the questions. You ready?
Ready.
All right. Here we go. Our first question comes from Teresa from Brooklyn, New York. Hey, Teresa. I've tried every diet on the market. Nothing seems to work. I get depressed and I end up gaining more weight. What's wrong with me? And first of all, there's nothing wrong with you, you know, but how would you deal with a patient that does that kind of yo-yo?
Right. So one of the things about Teresa, she may be trying to do this on her own, and there may be a feeling of shame and embarrassment when she fails on her goals. So again, in terms of having a trainer, having a buddy, having a workout partner, having a therapist, working with a nutritionist, it may be helpful to have someone else to help her along her goals, along the path to reaching her goals, so that she doesn't have to do it alone.
So you don't recommend someone that has weight to lose to start a regular diet, you know, those Nutrisystem or other those other.
Well, those may be helpful. And when she says the diets have failed, it suggests that maybe there's too much faith being put in the diet. The diet may be one very important part of the plan, but it may not be the only part. So I mean, simply it's going to be diet and exercise, and then she mentioned depression, and so we'd have to know more specifically what she means by depression. But if she means depression as a treatable illness, then it would be important that the depression were treated, and that the weight wasn't just an equation or a shorthand for the feelings, the mood feelings.
I see.
And then to take a comprehensive approach to deal with the depression, to deal with the weight, to deal with the diet, to deal with the exercise that probably should be part of the total plan.
I see.
And then to not try to do it alone, but to do it in conjunction with somebody that
helps a lot. Teresa, get someone to do it together. I think you'll stick a lot more with the program, and it'll be much easier as well. We got Tom from DC. Hey, Tom. I suffer from depression. Here's another one here. My doctor prescribed some drugs that promote weight gain. Can exercise help me get off the meds? What do you think? And first of all, before we even begin with that, what is considered depression? You know, I want to try to understand, is there a marker where we say, okay, low levels of serotonin or norepinephrine or other of those, if you're under that level, you're considered depressed? Or
So there are no biological markers for depression, so there's no blood test that you can take. So it's a combination of biological symptoms and psychological symptoms that meet the criteria for depression. And what those are basically are changes in sleep pattern, changes in appetite, changes in bowel motility, constipation or diarrhea, loss of interest, particularly loss of interest, loss of libido, loss of interest in sex, or other things that had been previously pleasurable to one. Psychological symptoms including a sense of hopelessness, loss of optimism for the future, maybe a feeling that life isn't worth living, a decrease in energy, a constellation of symptoms that are both biological and psychological. Medications can be helpful, particularly medications that increase serotonin level or norepinephrine level, as you identified.
Right.
And some of those, in any medication, there's the benefits of the medication and the side effects of the medication. So you try to balance the benefits that you're looking for against the side effects that you don't want. And some more than others may cause weight gain. And if that's a particular problem, then it may be that another medication would be more useful for Tom. Because
if you're depressed because of weight gain, but then you take a medicine that makes you gain weight, you're in this vicious cycle here. And my question is, could exercise get you off the meds?
Theoretically it could, possibly it could. There's no single answer for that. But for some people it could be an important factor in that. Sometimes patients that I've had have been on an antidepressant medication for some time, and they'd say they would like to go off it. And the way we would do that would be we would try to decrease the dose if they still feel okay. Decreasing the dose, again we're talking about doing this slowly over a period of several weeks, then that's fine. And sometimes with the medication and with therapy and with lifestyle changes, it may be that they've learned things about themselves in psychotherapy that means they'll have less need for medication. But if after several weeks they say, actually I'm beginning to feel the way I felt when I went on the medication, I don't like that feeling, it makes sense to be on the medication. So let's abandon the plan to go off the medication.
I see. I think we have time for one more question. Unfortunately, I have so many more questions from our viewers. Hi, I'm Janice from London, UK. Hello, Janice from London. Is emotional eating a real medical thing, or is it an excuse we use?
Well, it's a real medical thing. I mean, we hear of comfort foods, and sometimes people eat to deal with anxiety. Sometimes people eat when they feel hungry, and it may be an emotional hunger that's felt as a physical hunger, and so eating may be helpful in terms of that. It goes back to the early comment that I made about knowing oneself and knowing what it means for each individual, and then how to deal with that situation that one is dealing with, trying to solve by eating, but that creates another problem, which may then become a vicious cycle. And so trying to figure out what it is that stimulates one to do the things that one does, and then what it would take to make a behavioral change to do something different. A medication could be helpful in a situation like that. But again, to have someone to walk that path with, whether it's a doctor or a trainer or a nutritionist, or someone who's helping them monitor what's going on, and then to measure progress periodically.
Thank you so much for all of this. That's all the time we have. I can't believe it flew by like this.
It did fly by. Thank you very much.
I gotta tell you, I learned so much today. And I hope you all learned a lot as well. Thank you so much for watching. And thank you so much for being on the show. And check out our website at yalafitness.com for more incredible information on fitness, nutrition, and all the good stuff. I'm Laurent with Dr. Allen Dyer saying à bientôt. You know what that means, right?
À bientôt, en français.
En français, it means we'll see you soon.